5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking to myself as Chairman Jordan was talking about kind of the history, the chronology of this investigation, as these two witnesses well know, there were, about a half dozen defenses offered by the IRS throughout the course of this investigation, each of which collapsed under its own illogic. It began with the two people in Ohio that were blamed, and then it went to my favorite defense, which was that the IRS is too incompetent to be able to construct a scheme as sophisticated as this scheme was, and then they moved from that defense to but we also targeted progressives too, so at least we were equal in our discrimination. And then my favorite, the one they settled on towards the end, was but the president himself did not personally approve this targeting scheme, therefore you don't need to look at it anymore. I know the next hearing is about the process that Koskinen had mentioned due process in his opening statement that he didn't give to us, and the next hearing is about what processes do, the procedural part of due process, whereas this one is more of the substantive part of the due process analysis. And I am interested, as other members are, what elements need to be proven. What's the standard of proof? Is it clear and convincing evidence? Is it preponderance? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt? Does anyone know? Do the rules of evidence apply? Can you use hearsay? So I'm interested in that. But Chairman Chaffetz, you said something that I wrote down, which doesn't happen very often, but it did happen today, which is that impeachment is a penalty. It's a punishment. And you're exactly right. It is. It's a punishment. What Congress really wants is access to the documents and the witnesses, because that is the lifeblood of any investigation. You cannot conduct an investigation if you don't have access to the documents and the witnesses. We know that. Unfortunately, those who seek to not be investigated also know that. So until this body begins to incrementally assert itself with impeachment acknowledged being the ultimate penalty. By the way, I want to make sure, since I have two experts, one for sure, expert in front of me, and then the chairman of oversight, did I hear correctly that incompetence is not an impeachable offense? Because I always believe that malfeasance in office, or the failure to perform the duties of your office, could be an impeachable offense. Is that your understanding as well?
It can be a factor, yes.
So how can incompetence be a defense when the allegation is incompetence? If that's what we're alleging, it doesn't have to be a crime. The notion that you can only impeach someone who commits an actual violation of the criminal code is nonsense. There are lots of ways to screw up in your job that don't rise to the level of meeting the U.S. criminal code. So the notion, if I heard it correctly, that incompetence is a defense to an allegation of being incompetent, it's hard for me to get my head around that. All right, let me ask you this, either Chairman DeSantis or Chairman Chaffetz. Mr. Koskinen said every email has been preserved. Was that true or false?
False.
So if it's false, then the next line of inquiry was whether or not it would be intentionally false, negligently false, whether or not he had a duty to investigate but did not perform that duty. I guess that's what we want to investigate, right? Not the falsity of it, but the nature of the falsehood.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and you're a prosecutor. Now, these aren't criminal offenses, but you remember 18 U.S.C. 1001. A reckless disregard for whether a statement is true or a conscious effort to avoid learning the truth of a statement can be construed as making a knowingly false statement. And so we're in a situation here where, at best, he just simply refused to avail himself of the proper facts and came to Congress and testified under oath and made a statement that's just factually incorrect.
I also have a note, backup tapes from 2011 no longer exist. Was that true or false?
That is true. Now, they went back and they were able to find some, but some were, as they call it, degaussed.
So it would be false to say they no longer exist. Clearly, they exist because somebody went and found them.
it's how you define degaussing, but some of them went through this degaussing process, which
you're
is
talking about
essentially
degaussing,
destroyed.
you're losing.
Exactly, but that was their defense. That was what they suggested.
I mean, it's a little tricky because they destroyed a lot of tapes, obviously, but then there were other tapes that the Inspector General just, after the commissioner made the statement, they just hopped in their car, went to West Virginia, asked for tapes, and they found a bunch of tapes. And I think there were 1,000 unique emails that they were able to find off those tapes. So when the commissioner said that there were no backup tapes, at the time he said that, that was false.
Well, I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman, but I'm looking forward to the next panel because I am interested in hearing how incompetence can be a defense to an allegation of incompetence, and I think it would be the law profession.
I was off of painkillers in 3 days and never on opioids. So I hope that answers your question. I think anything more than that really needs to be carefully looked at.
Are you a mental health professional? Are you a health professional?
Am I? No, I'm a mom of 4 kids. I think I'm probably a whole lot of things. I could be a mental health professional by the time I raise 4 children.
Good. Well, we got one common sense answer out of the 5, and it was the person who's not a mental health professional, or not a health professional. Thank you much.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of our panelists, and I want to thank my friend from Maryland for his gracious invitation, which I will take him up on. I would love to go see what's happening in Baltimore. I suspect, Mr. Chairman, that it is, at least on a larger scale, similar to what was happening in my own hometown, which is why I started a drug court in 2000. And in addition to that drug court, we started a drug court for expectant mothers who were using controlled substances during the course of their pregnancy, because I do believe getting them off drugs is infinitely preferable to incarceration in nonviolent cases. I would also say this, Mr. Chairman, and to my friend from Maryland, there is no joy like going to a graduation ceremony for those who have concluded drug court successfully. I have had folks that I prosecuted stop me in the grocery store to show me their certificate from their graduation, and they were prouder of that than anything you or I could have ever accomplished in our careers. I would just counsel folks that we're still going to need prisons, so I'd be a little reluctant to close all the prisons as we open up drug courts. Because the gentleman from Maryland is right. I'd say about half the crime we saw for 16 years, drugs and or alcohol, were at the root of that. And there was one addict in particular, Mr. Chairman, who took a hammer to the older couple that lived next to him and beat them. They were in bed, asleep, in the middle of the night. He broke in to rob them, and he beat them with a hammer where they were unrecognizable as humans. That was the pathologist's description, not mine. And then he raped the female victim post-mortem. He was an addict, but we're going to need to hang on to those prisons, Mr. Chairman, in addition to the drug courts. And I would be happy to go to Maryland with my friend to see the work that they're doing there, and I would invite him down to Spartanburg. Drug court can save people's lives and get them off. I just hope they get off before they do acts of violence against the innocent public, because the addicts sometimes leave a wake of violence and mayhem in the wake of their addiction. With that, I would yield back.
Would gentlemen yield, please, just for 1 second?
Be happy to.
First of all, I want to thank you for agreeing to come to Baltimore. I agree to go to South Carolina. I'd be happy to. And just one thing, Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. We have very effective drug courts in Maryland. And I know what you're talking about. When one of my first cases was a death penalty case, early in my career, where a young man hammered his grandmother to death, and he was on drugs. So I get it. I get it. I'm just trying to, like I said, I think there are different categories here of folk, and I swear, I just wish we could catch them early, like you said, because I've seen some really bad stuff. So I think the thing is trying to figure out a balance here. And even when you figure out the balance, you're probably going to still find people falling through the cracks. But I guess we have to use our best science and best judgment. But thank you, gentlemen, for your
Yes, sir.